for wisdom, understanding, knowledge. Help us to apply this to this school district, these administrators, these students, the best way you see fit. We ask for you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. This time I'll ask for approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions or corrections?
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor? 5-0. All right, I hope you had the opportunity to look over last month's minutes. We have any corrections or additions or anything that we need to hear? None. I'll ask for a motion
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
and a second. All in favor? 5-0. This is the best time of the night. Accommodations.
Students, that's right.
At this time, it is always our favorite time is to honor our students, because that's really what we're about in Anderson School District 3. And we want to honor a student that has a perfect score on the project Lead the Way biomedical exam, Amiri Ejiri. And she can't be here tonight, but I do want to thank Dr. Estes, the director of the Anderson Institute of Technology, for being here with us. And if you don't mind, I'll ask you to take this too. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. That's fine. Yes, I think that would be a very well deserved. Very well. Okay, a perfect score on that test is no easy task. And so, okay, our next group, and we are excited to have a room full of wrestlers with us tonight. And so, first of all, we want to honor some accomplishments for All-State and state runner-ups. So at this time, I have James Gray, 2026 AAA State Wrestling runner-up, 2026 3A All-State Wrestling selection. And then we have Luke Gray, 2026 3A State Wrestling runner-up, and 2026 3A All-State Wrestling selection. We also have Jace Devlin, 2026 3A State Wrestling runner-up, 2026 3A All-State Wrestling selection. And our next one is JB Tripp, 2026 3A State Wrestling runner-up, 2026 3A All-State Wrestling selection, North-South All-Star selection. And I will say that I didn't get to attend these matches, but I know these were some hard-fought matches, and you all represented us well and came very, very close to even being state championships. So let's get a picture with these three.
These four.
Okay, we also have a middle school state champion, Selena Haygood. Okay, we also have a 2026 3A All-State Wrestling selection, Ellie Busby. Let's get a picture of the Ben and then we'll do the rest of I told our wrestling coaches, and I thank them for being here tonight, Coach McComas and Coach McComas. and Coach Hayes, and I don't think I missed any of the other coaches. Coach King, I'm my favorite former student from many years ago. And if any of you other ones were my former students, you were my favorite too, but I know that Paul was in the room. So I do appreciate everything you all have done. And also there's another Mr. McComas that I think helps with the team. And you all have done a phenomenal job. And I tell you, when we had females starting to wrestle, I told the athletic director, I said, as soon as we have enough to make a girls team, make a girls team. And I'm excited that we have grown into having a girls team who have represented us so well. So we wanted to recognize our first ever varsity girls team, Kiera Arthur. And we've already called Ellie Busby's name, so we'll also recognize her again. Dara Fullwood. Shayna Gentle. Natalie Haygood. Chloe Hart. Danielle Hoskins. Emily Joyner. Mackenzie Powers. And Shamira Wardlaw. I also have to say I'm very impressed with this group because I know some of them went to the track meet first to do their events, and from this they're going back to the track meet to do their events, and they still dressed up. So I think that says a lot about the quality of our students and the dedication. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, let's bring the boys back up here.
I had a hard time reading them lips. You should have hollered.
I didn't mean to leave you all out, coaches. Okay, at this time we also have two other recognitions, and that is our bus driver of the month. This month we would like to recognize Kim Evans and Brittany Whitten. This came from Miss Dodd. I'm nominating Kim Evans and Brittany Whitten These ladies drive our special needs buses, so they are responsible for our most special medically fragile children. These ladies pay attention to details that create the safest environment for our students. Watching them deliver and pick up our students is a gift because of the love and respect they show to each of our children. They are truly concerned about their safety and well-being on the bus, in the classroom, at home, and in the community. They put a lot of love and effort into their jobs daily to care for our most special students, and we are very thankful for them. Congratulations for our bus recognition of the month to Brittany Witten and Kim Evans.
Thank y'all.
Very much. At this time, I want to dismiss the wrestling team and the track team. Now, of course, you're welcome to stay if you want to, but if not, this would be an appropriate time to leave the meeting. And good luck to y'all.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll get us started by reviewing our general fund performance through the end of March. So through March 31st, our revenues exceed our expenditures by $2,661,100. Feel pretty good about where we stand this point in the year. When you compare it to last year, from a dollar standpoint, the total, we're within $2,000 of where we stood this time last year, so feel pretty good about that. We do have a few timing differences that I want to make note of. that will actually bring us down a little bit and put us a little behind last year, which is what we've seen throughout the year. So there's nothing to be expected. So one of them is a fee in lieu payment we typically receive this time of the year. We received that money in March last year. We have not yet received it, but we have gotten word from the county treasurer's office that money's in hand, so we should see that on next month's report. This year we received our manufacturer's depreciation reimbursement money this month, whereas we did not receive it until April last year, so that's going to work against us from the comparison standpoint. And then just on a smaller item, we had some payments go out with the way the month end fell with spring break. We had some additional utility payments, about $35,000 worth that got paid in March that were for April billing. So a little bit of timing there. The net of those three larger timing differences is about a $350,000 reduction. So that does put us behind last year, but still not an alarming amount, and is to be expected with what we've seen throughout the year. Other than those timing differences, all the revenues are looking pretty good and where we expect them to be. I know last month we got Mr. Burdett asked a question about the dollar increase on the purchase services, and I told you what I thought it was for. And I did want to circle back and confirm that it is almost 100% attributed to the special ed contracted services being in the general fund, and also the substitute staffing. So, and what will reinforce that is that percentage of budget on the purchase services on the far right side. We're less than 1% difference at 82.39% of budget, where last year we were at 81.7. So it gives us reassurance that we have the budget to support that dollar increase as well. So on a similar line of things, I mentioned the utility payments. Those get grouped with the supplies and materials line item. So this month we see a percentage increase there compared to last year at 79 versus the 71 we were at last year. About 6% of that is from the utilities that I mentioned there. So a little bit of timing differences causing some differences from the current year to prior year comparison. So other than that, we feel pretty good about where things stand. I know last month we talked about the 135th day approaching and wanted to share with you where we settled up on the enrollment. So we were at 2,611 was our 45th day average daily membership. At the 135th day, we came in at 2,600.59, so we're down about 10.5 students from an ADM perspective. Our weighted pupil units came down by 9.5 from the 45th day. So what that means from a financial perspective and how it affects our state-aided classrooms, if we were just plugging in those changes, leaving all other factors the same statewide, we expect that to be about a $40,000 reduction to the allocation we're currently receiving. However, that is still about $130,000 over our budget and revenue line item. So we still feel like we're in a good spot. So barring any big widespread change across the state that would change that number significantly, we feel like we'll be able to hit that targeted revenue benchmark on the state-aided classrooms there. Just in the changes from the 45th day, our base student weighted pupil units stayed pretty consistent. Our special ed weighted pupil units actually increased. To the ADM increased by 6, and the weighted pupil units up 15.8. Our CTE weighted pupil units actually decreased by 16.5, and which converts to weighted pupil unit decrease of 19.9. And then our add-on weightings that get tacked on top of our our base weights came down by 5.46. So those changes culminated in the 9.5 weighted pupil unit reduction that ultimately drives our state-aided classrooms calculation. So overall, feel pretty good about where we are in the general fund. Everything's coming in about like we expected. Any questions on the general fund?
I think I missed it.
Yes.
It said, which day enrollment was that, down 10 students, that 135th day?
That was the 135th day, down 10 from the 45th. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
General fund?
Yes, sir.
All right, so moving on to the local option sales tax. So we did not have the February allocation as of our last board meeting, so we have two allocations for you to update you on. So our February allocation, which reflects the December holiday spending, came in at $349,238.12, which is our second largest collection to date. That typically is what we expect to see there. The only collection we received that's larger was last February, so just got edged out by about $4,000. So still came in really, really well. In the March collection, we typically see a drop off. It did drop off a little bit at $278,682.39. Still above what we received March last year, so the trend continues to be up for us. The combination of the two collections that we received combined $125,584 going directly to debt service, and then $502,336 is available for capital use. So still coming in strong. You see the percentage on the far right. We're still trending about 5 or 6% above last year's collection. So if we continue on the pace we're at, we would look to bring in a little over $3.6 million in total sales tax collections for the year, which is really strong. It's coming up good. Any sales tax related questions? All right, so turn it over to our April budget update. To kind of start us off, all of these numbers here are still based on the House version. The Senate Finance just wrapped up their budget. We're getting updates up to like today on that. So, but the full Senate has not yet debated, considered the budget, so we haven't gotten any estimates from that. So we're still working off the House version and the projections we've gotten there. And then also just little housekeeping items. I do have links included in the presentation. I've given you hard copies of those just for the sake of your eyes, and it's tough to show up on the screen. So all the links are in front of you. If you got any questions that you'd like, feel free. So our proposed FY26-27 general fund budget is at a total of $33,261,550. Comparing it from the current year's budget to this proposed budget, that's a total increase of $1,070,900, which is a 3.33% budget increase. It's a little bit smaller increase than what we've seen in the past couple of years. Last year, I think we were at 6.92. The year before that, about 4.5%. So it's starting to come down a little bit. I did not lead off with this last month, but did want to point out this budget does not include a request for a millage increase. We received our letter from Revenue Fiscal Affairs Office about the millage increase limitation, which is calculated at the statewide consumer price index, inflation factor, plus any local growth. That number for us this year is 2.63%. So for us, that would have equated to a maximum of 5 mills, which could have generated approximately $185,000 if the full millage was asked for. But that is not included in this budget. In this budget, we do have a step increase for all employees, and then a 2% cost of living increase for all employees as well. I left last month's budget update discussing special education receiving some priority there. We do have proposed one additional special education teaching position to be housed at Star Elementary for next year to help support that growing need there. Another priority we mentioned was the federal funding outlook and being aware of those budgets. We have gotten some assurance that the funding that we receive now will still be in place for next year. Now, the allocations we don't have certainty of, and we typically do not at this point in the game, but we do feel confident that all our title programs, our IDEA funds will be there for us for next year. However, with the reductions we've seen, we did want to reallocate some costs to help restore what budgets we can provide to the schools. Specifically, Title I as an example, we have 0.71 FTE. Those were more district level positions that had some funding tied to some salaries and benefits that we are proposing to reallocate to the general fund. And that way we can have a larger, even larger percentage of that Title I grant going directly to the schools. Same type deal there, 0.63 FTEs reallocation of Title IV salaries and benefits. Those were going to our stream teachers at the elementary schools. So putting that in the general fund, which will allow Title IV to fund, honestly, a little bit of overflow of the Title I salaries and benefits, and kind of as a safeguard there to make sure we can maintain those supply budgets that we like to provide specifically for our elementary schools in Title I. Then we also have 4.0 FTE reallocation of our CTE teaching salaries and benefits to state CTE funds. We'll touch on that on the next slide. Just want to make sure that is a big cost shift that you're going to see on the general fund side. It's not an elimination; it's a reallocation. But we'll touch on the reason for that here in a moment. And then from our non-payroll budget increases, we've got $72,000 of net non-payroll budget increases. And I call that net because we do have some reallocation of specifically some special ed services that we used to contract out for that we were able to bring in-house in the form of a district employee. So we got some changes along those lines, but the net effect of all that is a $72,000 increase. On the funding side, of course, as we know, the biggest funding allocation we receive is our state aid to classrooms, and the state's been looking at making some changes and tweaks to that funding formula, and the House has revealed theirs, and we've had some time to look at the impacts of each of them. The first one, and I think from a budgeting standpoint, the most impactful is the House has increased the hold harmless threshold to the FY 25-26 funding levels. So more or less, the funding we're receiving this year, our money will not go below that next year in how the funding formula works. So in prior years, and the current year included, that threshold has been our FY 21-22 funding levels. So what we've been receiving versus the threshold that we can't dip below, there's a big gap there, which is why we've talked a lot about how the impact of changing one student can have a big dollar impact up and down. What this does is allows us to basically use the state budget projections we receive and budget closer to that number, because a decrease in enrollment won't hurt you as bad because you've got that safety net sitting there for you. You still have the incentive that way. If you gain students, that number does grow significantly, but the hold harmless protects you that way. If you have an unexpected drop in enrollment, that will protect you. So where in years past we've had to budget with a reduction of 25, 30 students, we're not having to do that because we've got that calculation in there. And so with that put in place, there's a lot more districts that are needing that hold harmless. I'd say about half of the districts across the state, us being included, needing some hold harmless money to make sure that we're not losing in all these funding changes. Another one that's it's going to look weird on your budget summary sheet. It makes it very obvious. We have a health insurance revenue line item that looks like a big reduction, a reduction of $425,000, and that is a result of this change here on this bullet. Basically, the legislator's taking prior year's health insurance funding that we used to receive separately, and they're putting it into the state aid to classrooms formula. But the new health insurance funding that we received that's intended to cover our 2026 insurance premium increase is still going to be separate. So we got health insurance funding coming in two different methods. That's how they're doing it. So I mentioned to you our increase, it'd probably be about $50,000. That's exactly what our allocation was for the health insurance. So we're going to have a health insurance line item for $50,000, and that is intended to cover our 2026 insurance premium increase. All other previous health insurance is going through the formula. So that big reduction is tied to that change. The other change is the 0.2 additional weighting that was assigned to CTE students has been removed. And what that actually does, what that will do, the first thing in the formula, it'll recalculate everyone's proportionate share, and for Anderson 3, it actually increased our proportionate share when measured against districts across the state. So that piece helped us. But in addition to that, the state is reallocating approximately $300,000 from our state aid to classrooms allocation and putting in state CTE funds. There's a formula tied to that, and part of that's driven by, in the proviso, that no district or no entity is getting less than $250,000. So you've got some districts going from the base $50,000, which is where it's currently at, up to the $250,000. And you got some entities that are solely benefiting. So that floor is really helping some, but what that's basically doing is just taking money from the general funds, the state funds there. So the 4.0 full-time equivalent for the CTE teachers that I mentioned on the previous slide, it comes in within $5,000 of that change that we're basically seeing shifted. So we're just having the expense following the revenue. Now, one thing that could change that, we have our meeting with AIT later in the month. We will want to align with how Anderson 4 and Anderson 5 approaches this as well. Of course, as you know, we pay a significant portion of the operation costs for AIT out of our general fund. There's a potential that that might be what gets reallocated to state funds, and then we leave the payroll costs alone. So for the time being, that's what I had to closely match the dollars, but we will likely try to align with what Anderson 4 and Anderson 5, how they approach it. So it may show up differently than the way we have it in terms of the individual line items, but the total dollar amount should not see a change. Another change in the state aid to classrooms is the charter add-on weightings. The legislators have been adamant about funding that separately outside the formula, but separately in quotations because it's just a separate column in the formula. It's taken away from the whole pot. It's $288 million being allocated to the charter schools for the virtual weighting or the brick and mortar weighting that gets allocated to the charter schools. So I'm not so sure it's separate, but that is a change that got put in place. So the net of all these changes to help try to fund the $2,000 increase on the state minimum for us is $580,000. $280 of it going to the general fund, and then $300 that's getting moved to the state CTE funds. It's just showing up in the form of an expenditure reduction for us. So all those changes kind of boil down to that dollar amount. Got all that? All right, so our budget factors, a lot of this has not changed. So I've updated the FY 25-26 column with our final enrollment numbers. Still left our projected numbers that we've been looking at, just so the smaller reduction really doesn't hurt us anymore. With that hold harmless, we got that protection there, so didn't feel the need to change that. The index of tax-paying ability, that number stayed consistent and will stay consistent for us as it gets factored into the state aid to classrooms calculation. And then the value of a meal, we still haven't moved off that $2,000 increase in the value of a meal there, which would generate an estimated $380,000 there. So those are still the factors driving a lot of the revenue projections we have. For the high level overview of the budget changes on the revenue side, our state revenues, having those increased by $625,000. Majority of that coming from the state aid to classrooms allocation, and then also our tier 3 increase as well is a large piece in that. Our local revenues, that is driven primarily from the value of meal increase. That $505,000, that's $380 of that's from the value of meal increase. $75,000 of that is from the county equalization revenue that we received. Those numbers, that's based on actual collections we saw last year and where we're trending for the current year. Feeling good about increasing that by $75,000. And then our interest revenue line item, you've heard me talk about how that's one that the state treasurer's office brings in really good interest revenue. The rates have been really good. The outlook from the feds doesn't look like it's going to be changing dramatically anytime soon. So our lowest number that we finished for interest revenue the past 4 years, I think it's been $250,000. So we still got some cushion there, but still that's not a line item that you want to move up and down because that's a decision that can be made at the federal level. Could impact us tomorrow. Don't expect it to, but it could. So I don't like to tinker with that one too often, but we feel comfortable increasing that one to $100,000. So it shows up on that other revenues transfers in. There's a reduction, $60,000. All that is just a simple reallocation of how the state's funding our state-aided classrooms allocation. They have to distribute between the state general fund and the state EIA fund, which comes from penny sales tax statewide. That's just a reflection of their projection and how they're funding our state-aided classrooms. So the net of it is still that $280,000 I mentioned. And from an expenditure standpoint, just by category, got that there. Salaries and fringe, of course, is the largest piece of our budget. Payroll costs 89% of our total budget is tied up in salaries and fringe. I mentioned, and then those changes for purchase services and supplies and then the other objects, that makes up the $72,000 that I mentioned earlier. I do have a link to the budget change details, and I've given you a hard copy in the packets in front of you. That way, if you want to look at that in a little more detail, all that information that builds up to those numbers that we've been talking about. I have those for you. On the revenue side of things, everything's either from the state or actual collection we're seeing or assessments we're seeing from the county. That's really driving that. I know on the payroll costs, I think we've pretty much touched on a lot of those items that we have included in there. So our total increase for our payroll related expenditures is right at $1 million, a little under that. One other thing I did fail to mention, as it kind of pertains to the federal funding outlook, our IDEA funds, that's another fund where the allocation is not increasing, but we've got some payroll costs in there. So we need to reallocate one FTE to the general fund there for a paraprofessional position. So we do have an impact there. So did want to take a moment to point that out there. So that's on the payroll side. And then I did want to point out a few items that are not payroll related. First one being establishing a new budget for our bus cameras. That's something we've kind of piecemealed over the years. Been able to do that with sales tax. Feel like we need to establish a good recurring budget for those cameras. We were able to get our security cameras in our buildings on a good rotation, so in a way that we can replace those and cycle those in annually. So we want to do the same thing for our bus cameras there. So that's a new $10,000 budget. Our summer reading camp, we currently receive state funds for that, and then we also have a budget in the general fund to help supplement that program, which has been at $22,500. The state has put an emphasis on that and provided some additional support this year. And talking to Dr. Smith, we felt comfortable reducing that budget by $15,000 and still being able to provide the exact same services that we're accustomed to providing during that reading camp. So that was a bit of good news for us on the state side there. Another new budget, special education needs, is kind of more supply needs that pop up annually. Is things that Ms. Burton always needs, but you can't always quite plan for. And part of that's due to the IDEA funding shortfall and wanting to provide a budget there for that. I will say the need is actually greater than this, but this past week we found out, and we were fortunate to receive a grant for a little over $20,000 from Title I Targeted School Improvement Grant that Ms. Burton feels confident that we can address a lot of these needs that she had requests for, that we'll be able to accommodate within that grant. So we'll be able to take care of a lot of those needs through that grant we recently received. I know we discussed the substitute staffing budget. That's one to update based on our actual amounts, increasing it by about $17,000 to get us to $200,000. We feel like is a budget that we can work with moving into next year. And then I guess the last item I want to take a moment to point out is the mileage reimbursement rate. With this budget, I'd like to include this increase. Currently, we reimburse mileage at 66 cents per mile. The IRS has updated that mileage reimbursement rate to 68.5 cents. So with this budget, we propose to increase that for travel taken on or after July 1 to 68.5 cents. So we have right at $100,000 worth of travel budgets in the general fund. We expect that cost for those budgets to cost us about an additional $3,000. So and that would be distributed to all budgets that include travel, like your department heads, professional development funds, and things like that that depend on travel. So those are specific ones I wanted to point out. Certainly willing to answer questions or talk on any others you'd like to address, but those are the ones I just wanted to make sure I discussed for you guys. Wanted to put this budget timeline in front of you once again. We've made it through the House version. We just recently finished the Senate Finance budget deliberations in early April, and then I mentioned the full Senate discusses or considers their budget in late April, and the conference committee will be scheduled to provide their report to the governor from May 12th to the 14th. So that covers your state level budget. Here locally, of course, our budget reading will be next month, May the 11th. Last year we did the community budget workshop. We felt like that had some good conversations from that. So I'd like to propose offering that again. So you guys are getting this hip and maybe come up with a good date that works for all of you. Certainly willing to do that whenever. I think we did it the Wednesday after Memorial Day last year is when we did it, and that timeline seemed to work pretty well. That way it gave us time to, if we got any changes to make, still gives us a little time to implement those changes ahead of the second budget reading and the public hearing, which for us is June 8th this year. And then we just got on Friday the county board schedule for their budget workshops and approvals. So June 15th, that Monday evening, we will be presenting to the County Board of Education our budget, and they will actually be approving budgets that night, and then also in the July meeting on the 20th, they will be considering any millage increase requests. So for us, that likely won't have an impact, but they are almost having a two-step approval process in this situation. So if all goes according to plan, our budget will be approved by the county board on June 15th. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of leave you with is just some bills just to keep an eye on that would absolutely have a financial impact on us. The first one being the House Bill 3645 for paid parental leave. This would extend paid parental leave from 6 weeks to 12 weeks of paid leave. And then spouse leave, they're currently getting 2 weeks, would get 4 weeks. So the behavior that will follow from that is all your paid parental leave, they would likely take the full 12 weeks, which would increase our cost for substitutes in the situations where they're currently not taking 12 weeks. So there would be a financial impact from that. One that would have a financial impact, a big financial impact, but we've got a little time to plan for it, is House Bill 3258 for mobile panic alert systems. I know we've talked a lot about those. As it stands right now, if this goes through, all schools will be required to have those implemented and operational July 1, 2028. And there's no funding tied to that. They have said we can use the state security grant money to implement it. But the concern, at least I know from school boards, is whether that money is sufficient for everything that would be involved for districts to be able to implement that. So that's something that's down the road, but could have a big dollar impact and would require some planning for sure. And then the last one I want to leave you with is the budget proviso 1.113. That's the capital funding for schools. The House version had $75 million in it. Senate Finance did keep this in their version of budget, so that's the good news. And they added some language to it, which narrows kind of the guidelines for evaluation of which districts could get this awarded to, which do, I think, favor us for sure, which is a good thing. The downside is that they reduced the $75 million down to $50 million in the Senate Finance. So money's still there, but a little bit less on the Senate side. So that's one to keep an eye on to see where the dollar amount lands for sure. So with that, honestly, the state budget, I don't know if I've ever seen the House and the Senate quite as aligned as they seem to be this year on the funding side. So really what we're seeing specifically on the state aid classrooms, I don't expect to see much change from here on out. A lot of times there's potential for increased money going in there or adding money to the formula. It seems pretty set that what we got is what we're going to get. The only thing that's going to change is maybe the enrollment projections. That once the 135th day numbers get finalized statewide, we might see a little bit of change there. But with that hold harmless, it's just going to be a shuffling, and we're going to probably end up in a very similar spot where we're at now. So really, the main things I'm watching, and at least in the current year, for any potential revenue is going to be on the property tax side. See how the assessments hold in the coming months, and then I wouldn't expect it to be a larger increase because it seems to be stable now. Is our manufacturer's depreciation reimbursement that comes to us in 2 allocations. We've gotten the first one, so once that second one comes in, we'll evaluate that and see if there's any additional room to work with. But that's really the only place I would foresee it coming in. So for the most part, I feel like the total dollar amount we're at now is going to be pretty similar to where we ended up at. And I do want to just kind of make you aware ahead of our next meeting, I will have those more comprehensive notebooks for you, the budget notebooks, to give you a little bit more of an opportunity for an in-depth look of all this stuff and all the things we typically provide to you. So give you time to have that first budget meeting so you can learn about it. So with that, I'll turn it over to any questions you guys may have.
One quick question,
Yep.
and you'll have to forgive me. I know we've talked about this briefly before, but those panic alert systems, if you were to have to add that to the budget today, what's a good general pie in the sky number that you put on that?
The estimate we got, I believe, if we spread it out over a 5-year period, is about $50,000 a year.
Okay.
And that was not including any implementation costs. That was the recurring costs. And that quote, 2 years old probably?
Yeah, well, right. Not anything, concrete, just if it were to be required.
It would, honestly, I would explore capital funding, maybe even other funding outside the general fund for some of that stuff. It might be the better path for us. Of course, exploring grant funding first.
Right.
Yep. That's right.
Pick it up out of the ground. Anybody else got anything?
Mr. Chairman, I got,
Yes, sir.
if I could, just quickly. First, I want to say thanks for all your hard work, man. I know this time of year is tough. So a lot of numbers. It's fun. I like how you say that. It's fun. So thanks for all your hard work. I like the 3%. I know several years ago, back during COVID, we had several years in a row where we were 10% every year. That's tough to sustain.
Right. We had some larger percentage increases from an overall budget standpoint, and I think a lot of that was driven at the state level. Of course, we're very dependent on state funding.
Yes.
And Government Master's push to increase teacher salaries and putting the funding behind that drove a lot of that. And then, of course, we've seen some growth here locally too to help push that along too. So, but yeah, it has come down a little bit, and I think we're kind of heading towards leveling out a little bit.
Great. So one day last week, I was asked to ask Senator Mike Gambrell if he would be willing. This is about board, and I just want to say this right here during open session, so we'll have a little record of this. But I was asked if I would contact Senator Mike Gambrell and ask him if he'd be willing to co-sponsor a budget proviso to allow school board members the option to participate in the state health insurance program like all other state and locally elected officials. So I think he's working on that. I got a message back from him that said that his staff is looking into it, and I hadn't heard anything back from that yet on that, but I just wanted y'all to know on that.
Mr. Barton, right, that would be for all school board members,
Correct.
not just Anderson?
Correct. Statewide.
There's a
Correct.
bill out there right now that's in Ways and Means since January 25, I think.
And, Mr. Chairman, I just have a couple of questions. The first slide, where it went over the 2%, the raise, you had the teacher salary schedules on there. Will we get all the salary schedules?
Yes, that will be in the comprehensive notebook for you. I'll try to, I believe, if memory serves me correctly, I'll give you the current years and the proposed schedules for next year's for all categories.
Because it's for everybody, all employees, 2%.
That's right, across the board, everybody's 2%.
Okay, and then that payroll-related expenditures sheet that you have.
Yes.
Where does the admin fall under there? I see bus driver pay increase, teacher pay increase, support staff.
Admin is grouped into the other support staff there. That would be the one that has a total of $140,000 line item.
So just support staff?
Yes, that's
They're
where
all
they
in
fall.
there
That's
together.
correct.
And then will we do a cost comparison of a 2% raise versus, adding $2,000 on to each person's?
Yes, so
Salary.
we started with 2,000 with where the state was, and it was more than what the budget could support. If you give me 1 second, I can tell you the increase. It was an additional $155,000, if I'm not mistaken. I can find that for you. Yes, going from 2% to a $2,000 increase for teachers would cost us an additional $155,000 or so, which right now we don't have the revenue to support that.
And the only other question is, 12 weeks of paid parental leave, that is a lot of lost instruction. Have we looked at supplementing teachers' pay with having them teach during their planning, especially at the high school level?
We have not gone down that path, but if that's something that needs to be looked at, we can have that discussion, but we have not gotten to that point yet. One question, I think we're going to, if this continues to gain some steam, we may take a closer look at how many are already taking the 12 weeks, even though the paid parental leave only extends to 6. How much behavior change are we going to actually expect to see? So that's something, if this continues to pick up steam, we're going to have a little more concrete information.
And Ms. Arnold, if I can add to that, I'm also, I haven't seen the verbiage of this, but if they give 12 weeks, then are we going to be forced to then allow them to take some of their time
On top of the 12.
on top of that? And then, because while this sounds great for families, you're right, especially in a semester course at the high school level, you've lost the majority of that course. And so I do think we'd have to look at how we're going to cover that content.
Because right now, it's just covered by a substitute teacher, just non-certified.
Well, we try our best to get a certified teacher if we can. That's the first, but if not, then we try to get at least a sub that has the content knowledge.
I think if they, if it ends up getting much steam and moving on to where we think that's going to become the 12 weeks, I'd like to see how many certified teachers we've been able to get in there in place, because that is a lot of lost instruction. And like you said, it's very concerning for students. And they're going to miss a lot.
And I agree, and we'll definitely do that.
That would be great, because that may need to be a budget line item too.
I believe the school boards have been communicating that message to legislators as well about the time missed in the classroom as well, the impact of that.
So we want moms to be home with the babies, but we also want to make sure that our students that are, in the classrooms, they're still getting a quality education.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Appreciate it, brother. I know you put a lot of effort into it. It goes unnoticed. Thank you very much. All right, Kathy.
Okay, this time we do have two resolutions that need to be adopted by the board based on the results of the election. And I think the first one on the list, Marty, just I want to make sure these are in the right. Okay, they are. Okay, the first one is the adoption of a resolution declaring the results of the bond referendum conducted in Anderson School District 3 on March 10th, 2026. That election was certified the Thursday after the election. I sent you the results, but Dylan also has them on the next slide. And so these resolutions come directly from our bond attorney who's leading us through this process. And so this is just a resolution where you basically formally adopt what the Election Commission has already provided us. And the information on the paper is the verbiage of the motion. The second one is, again, is the adoption of the resolution authorizing the issuance of bonds. This follows the question that was on the ballot. And so again, it's just you all formally approving the resolution. Now, at this time, no bonds have been purchased, no bands have been purchased. Once that happens, we will come back with you along the way, and so that you will know all the details of what's purchased when. And so this is just really adopting a resolution stating that fact.
You want these?
It has to be two separate motions, yes.
Okay, y'all have heard the resolutions, suggestions. So I will entertain a motion for Resolution A.
So I would like to make a motion for the adoption of this resolution declaring the results of the bond referendum conducted in Anderson School District 3 on March 10, 26.
Yes, sir. We have a second. All in favor? 5-0. All right, and now we need a motion for the adoption of the resolution to authorize this.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0.
Okay, and just for information, we do now have to take the bond resolution, the second one you adopted, we have to take it to the county board next Monday night. So they're the next step in that, and that's already on their agenda. All right, and to kind of go along with that, just to, it's in your appendix items, is we are planning a groundbreaking on May 12th, 2026 at 10 a.m. I hope that you all can be there. This is not something you invite a whole lot of people to because the site will not be set up yet to have whole lot of parking, but Superintendent Weaver has this on her schedule. And so I hope you'll have plenty of time to kind of tweak your schedule to be there that day. It won't be a long event. We will have some other events that the public will be invited to once the site is in a space, and there's a beam, like a last beam thing we do, and some other stuff, but I want to put that date on your calendar.
Did you say there had been a time set for that, or you just?
Yeah,
said
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Yes.
It's on Tuesday.
Tuesday, yes, sir.
All right.
And just for information, the second house, the blue house is supposed to be moved by Friday.
Beans.
Yep, they do.
Everything went
move it
good
right
with the
down
first
here,
one.
Yes,
Yeah.
Even though the first one.
and it's bigger, so the second one should be easier.
That's good.
They learn from the first one, get a bigger truck.
Right.
Have practice.
All right. We need to enter into executive session for personnel and contractual matters, so I'll entertain the motion at this time.
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0. Appreciate all y'all coming tonight.
You ready? We going? I make a motion we come out of executive session.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0. All right.
Mr. Chairman, we'll move that the board accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve administrative candidate A as
Second.
presented.
All in favor? 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve certified candidates A, B, and C for the employment of the 26-27 school year as presented in the personnel report.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0. Looking for a motion for adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? 5-0. Thank y'all. Enjoyed it. See y'all next month.
I'm going home with the camper.
There you go.
We're not talking about all kinds of stuff.
If y'all get one, please let me see it. I'm saying, I want one for
We
you.
done went and drove one, but